welcome to episode 134 of the Player 3 podcast. I am your host, Luke Croft, and alongside me, the always visually stunning Larry Hunt.
Hi.
We've got a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to be talking about the Overwatch League, the ESRB's half-hearted attempt at addressing the loot box controversy, and also President Trump's meeting with the video game industry. But before we jump into all of that, Larry, my friend.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's a sunshiny day.
It is. It looks like it's warm outside, but it is not that warm outside.
It is not.
We opened up the windows of our house this weekend. Forgot to shut the windows of our house this weekend. 57 degrees in the house this morning when we woke up. So
I'm surprised that's only as cold as it got.
I'm trying to will spring into existence, and it just isn't happening. But anyway, we are the Player 3 podcast. We get together every Monday over here on twitch.tv/Player3podcast, talk about video games live, and then we push it out on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, youtube.com/Player3podcast. Subscribe, leave a comment, do all those things. If you have a question or something you'd like us to discuss, feel free to shoot us an email, player3podcast@gmail.com. But for right now, let's jump into it with, first of all, an announcement, Larry.
Okay, announce something to me.
Apparently, we developed a new game mode last week. I don't know if you remember this. In our wild speculation about PUBG,
I do.
Seth brought up, what if there was a Demolition Derby game mode? Well, it turns out H1Z1 is going to be introducing one. Not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is from Michael Higgum over at GameSpot. It says, H1Z1 was in early access for quite some time and went through many phases with its survival mode and battle royale mode, but the game recently launched with an official 1.0 version, along with a brand new game mode called Auto Royale. Up to 120 players are grouped into teams of 4 that are stuck to a car for the entire match. There's one driver and 3 shooters with health, weapons, and gadgets scattered across the map. In true Battle Royale fashion, players are forced into ever-shrinking zones by a deadly circle until one team emerges victorious.
That sounds every bit as exciting as fun and as fun as it did when Seth announced this new game mode. So we look forward to our royalty checks.
Exactly. So, yeah, didn't want to spend too much time on that, but did want to bring it up. I'm going to have to switch to looking at the notes on my phone here in a little bit probably. Because I am at 15%, because my computer charged my iPad 10% and then was like, can't do it anymore.
Huh.
All right, well, let's move on to our first segment. What have you been consuming? Larry, what have you been consuming?
Well, sorry, I zoned out. What have I been consuming?
Yes.
Star Wars Rebels. The show's getting ready to wrap up. Got the last 2 episodes premiering this week.
So, what channel does that come on? Like Disney XD?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's no way to watch Disney XD online without a cable service.
So whose do you steal?
I go to one of those dangerous, I'm probably going to get 1,000 viruses websites and watch it.
Oh, okay. I understand.
But Disney, see, here's the thing about those sorts of things. I mean, it's been found with music and with video that if you make a way that it's convenient for customers to get access to your content, they'll pay for it. But I'm not paying for the entirety of Comcast to watch Star Wars Rebels. Sorry, Disney.
Now, if I understand correctly, Larry, Disney purchased Hulu, correct?
I don't know. I know they own a ridiculous amount of things.
I know they at least own a part of Hulu. I'm pretty sure. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But so I think, they announced that they were going to do their own streaming service, that sort of stuff. I think they're trying to roll that all into Hulu probably. So hopefully soon, because like ABC shows are pretty much exclusively on Hulu, and ABC is a Disney property. So
yeah,
possibly. But I get that. I don't like the pirate stuff, but not because anything morally. I just don't want to go onto those websites and
right.
I
have a very old computer. I don't have a lot of confidence in its security anyway. If I was rocking a computer I really cared deeply about, I probably wouldn't do it.
The only thing I would worry about is if you do do you do any shopping on that computer?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'd be worried about is doing it on a computer that has my credit card information.
I do run a lot of deep stuff, like deep scan stuff pretty regularly, so I'm not super scared, but who knows?
All right, so
I mean, if places like Target and companies that I haven't given the rights to have my information are going to lose it anyway. Who even cares anymore?
That's true. That's totally true. My social security number is one of those ones that was mixed up in all that mess. So,
great.
What else have you been consuming?
About to consume me some black tea right here.
Yeah, what flavor is that? Is this from your box?
It is. I bought a wooden chest of 120 tea bags of 12 different varieties.
Nice.
And it's something organic. T.O.
I don't know.
Anyway, I've also been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. came back on. Last week, you remember I was talking about how all the TV shows had these weird schedules, and you helped me realize that it's because there was a little something called the Winter Olympics happening.
Yeah.
So I'm glad all my TV shows are coming back on. I got to watch The Flash again this week. It was good.
Let's pause there for a second. Do you watch the Winter Olympics?
No. I have a hard time following, I don't know. It's a lot to sit down and watch. Mm-hmm. And there's no sport in the Winter Olympics that I care enough to sit down and just watch the whole of. So I just, whatever clips make it to Twitter, I feel like the best of the best winds up clipped and put on Twitter. So that's what I see.
Yeah. For me, it's I care about too much already. Yeah. So it's really hard for me to care about the Winter Olympics. And I don't want to be one of those guys who's watching figure skating or whatever and tweeting about figure skating as if I watch figure skating outside of the 2.5 weeks, which is what my timeline was filled up with when I was on Twitter. People all of a sudden become freaking ice dancing experts.
Yeah.
And apparently, is there a difference between ice dancing and figure skating? I think there is.
I don't know.
But apparently everyone on my Twitter feed does, because they all became experts. So, but I do think it is one of those interesting things. It's this thing that, with the Summer Olympics, I think there's a lot of stuff that's in the public consciousness in the in-between years. There's basketball, there's golf, there's major sports that are in it that you're constantly thinking about. But when the Winter Olympics come, it's kind of like back in the day when the X Games were huge. Nobody cared about these things outside of the 2 weeks that the X Games were going on. But then it just enters the public consciousness, and it's just this kind of thing that exists for 2.5 weeks and then moves on until 4 years later. Yeah. I do like curling. Curling's a fun concept because I'm I can do this. I probably can't, but I think I can.
No, you probably can. Did you see the dads on the team this year?
Yeah. So, anyway, I sidetracked this.
It's all good. And you said this earlier, and I'm leaning this way as well. You might just unsubscribe from No Sleep.
Yes.
And I'm with you. Because, I've toyed with am I just growing tired of the horror genre or whatever? But if you go listen to old No Sleep, there is a difference. Even though the production value has gone up, the old stories were far creepier.
Well, and it's because the thing is I feel like there's a consistent quality of stories now, in the sense that they're either good or really good. Mm-hmm. Decent to really good. Whereas back in the day, it ran the gamut. There were stories that were awful, but then there were stories that were really, really great. And it's because they used to pull from the actual subreddit, and they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, the whole let's just use published authors thing. I don't know. I can get that in a lot of places. No Sleep has something unique to offer me. And I think part of it, too, is the No Sleep subreddit has just...
It's turned into, here's the 12th part of my story. Yeah. It's hard to turn that into an audio production.
I wonder if I should open the box I found in the back of my closet, part 72.
Which isn't an exaggeration. Those stories exist. No, I'm right there with you. It's my podcasting time has been consumed by Kind of Funny Games Daily. That's pretty much it. I listen to Kind of Funny stuff almost exclusively anymore. But
I still listen to Art of Manliness a lot. The Jocko podcast from time to time, and the Political Gabfest, and Left, Right, and Center. Those are my go-tos right now.
I've kind of not distanced myself. I've just stopped listening to the political stuff the last couple weeks just because I'm so exhausted by the gun debate. So exhausted that we're going to talk about it again here today. Let's see. What else have I been playing? What have I been playing? Or you have anything else?
I had one, but I forgot. I'll probably do what I do every week and remember it at the end of yours.
Or as soon as I start mine.
Okay.
PUBG.
Oh, I'm kidding.
Been playing a little bit of PUBG. Jumping back into Overwatch, which I know we're going to get into more here later. But part of that is because I've been watching copious amounts of the Overwatch League. And I find it wildly fascinating and a really great product. But again, we'll get to that here in a little bit. And then I watched Logan for the very first time.
Yes. What did you think?
I loved it.
It's in my top 5 movies of all time.
I loved it. Now, I will say this. It is not a perfect movie. Like, people... When it came out, it felt like everybody just thought it was perfect. Like, but to me, I thought it kind of... and you know me, I'm not, like, off-put by bad language or anything like that. But I think that it took the 15 years of history of having to be PG-13... And then just for the first 30 minutes of that movie, took all the liberty in the world with the language that they used because they were allowed to be R-rated in a way that almost took me out of it.
Yeah.
Because it felt like Wolverine was saying, you know, saying R-rated words like every other line.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I never got teary-eyed during a superhero movie until this movie.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert for Logan. You've had long enough, right?
Right.
So
we can talk candidly. It's been over a year, right?
Oh yeah. At the end, when Laura turns the cross into an X, I was like, oh my gosh. There's something to, you know, working in ministry we do. I would go to a lot of funerals. You've been to a lot of funerals.
Yeah.
There's something incredibly sad about the moment that everybody turns away from the burial site.
Yeah.
And walks away. Because it's like, this is the last time you're with this person until, you know, when they're interred. Interred, yeah.
And this movie captured this aspect of that as well. Like, the family, the close people, they always like they're the last to turn away, obviously. Yeah. There's like a time where they're there alone and her hanging back like that.
Yeah.
That movie messed me up. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast before, but so there are a few scenes where it gets pretty emotional, but that ending, and I can't remember, does she says bye daddy, right? Or something like that. And so ever since I became a father, like my daughter wrecked any sort of semblance of pretending to be the traditional emotionless American man. Especially like father-daughter stuff like destroys me if something happens to that relationship in a movie. And so this little girl loses her dad, says bye daddy. I looked at my wife and I said, when this is over, we need to hurry to the car so I can weep. And she laughed because she thought it was a joke. And then we got to the car and I wept in my car. I just broke down. I could not drive us out of the parking lot for about 5 minutes.
Yeah. So one of the problems with pretty much all the X-Men movies and with especially Wolverine as a character is I don't think they did a great job of humanizing him in any of the other stuff. Like even in like X-Men 2, that's the one with Sabretooth, right? Like
yeah.
That conflict was all centered around Wolverine, but I still felt like it didn't really humanize him. Whereas this, like, it did a good job of doing it without being super forward about doing it, unlike their R rating, which they were very forward about.
Yeah.
But after, and again, spoilers, after Charles dies, and he's talking to Laura and going off on her about, like, I didn't sign up for this. Now look at everything that I've lost. I lost this guy who, through the entirety of the movie, he was a jerk to. And I can never remember the guy's name, the albino guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then he loses Charles, who was a father to him through his entire life. Like, the whole time you're rooting for him to come around to protect this girl. And then in the end, it was the thing that you were rooting for that resulted in all of this loss for him. And then ultimately the loss of Logan himself. And it was just really great storytelling in a way that I mean, there's been good X-Men movies, but none like that. It's almost exactly like The Last of Us. The entire story, basically.
See, I've never been a big fan of the X-Men movies. Like, I've always thought they were okay. I've never watched them and be like, you know, I'm really glad I shelled out the money to watch this. I was like, eh. But this one, I loved it. And at its heart, it's a story about family and the strained relationships between family, but in the end, you still care about them. And just think about Logan as a character and how long he's been alive by this point and how much he has lost. And in the movie, finally grappling with his own mortality. Like, he's not invincible anymore. So it's a movie about death, too, accepting the fact that we're all going to die one day.
They did a wonderful job. Okay. That wasn't Hugh Jackman playing X-23, right?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Because they did a fantastic job of finding someone that looked exactly like him, if it wasn't.
I was assuming it was like Star Wars level CGI of some sort.
Or that they just, whenever it was his face and like it was good camera work or whatever. But those were intense. All the fight scenes with Laura, awesomely choreographed, just fantastic.
And some of the best child acting I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
that little girl.
Which it lended itself to a good performance because the majority of it is done without any dialogue, you know, and so it's really just a look empty. that was her role really.
Well,
like, look empty or angry.
But I think I don't know. I think sometimes when kids in movies have to act angry, that's actually one of their weak points.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not taking anything away from the performance. I think it was a well-directed movie, which also allowed her to do a really great job. But when she starts yelling at Logan in Spanish, right when he's like, "Oh, you can talk." But overall, if you haven't watched Logan, I'm sorry I've spoiled it all for you, but
it's still
you still need to go watch it because it's excellent. But yeah, that's everything I've been consuming. Did you remember your last one?
Yeah, but then you distracted me with Logan, which I was super pumped about. And you coming back to Overwatch, that's a huge deal, but we'll wait for that discussion.
All right, let's move on then to the releases of the week.
Releases of the week, clap, clap.
All right, nothing really major coming out this week. There's like a complete version, I believe, of Final Fantasy 15, but that's about it as far as titles, like new titles. However, I did want to talk about the PS Plus games, which we used to cover all the time, but now I only really put them in when it's noteworthy. Yeah. And I feel like this is a really strong month for PlayStation Plus, and that's because they are bringing Bloodborne, which is a fantastic game, and Ratchet & Clank, the reboot game, which was a solid game if you're into those sorts of things. It took me like 2 evenings to beat, you know, not a whole lot of time, but final boss fight, super frustrating. Like the most frustrating boss fight I've ever endeavored. More frustrating than anything I did in Bloodborne. But outside of that, that's really all that's coming out this week.
All right.
Those are your releases of the week. Clap, clap. All right, Larry, let's move on to topics. Yes, we've got... There's audio playing on my phone. Topics. Yeah, we've got some topics for you. Larry, I'm going to kick us off here.
All right.
And I want to talk about loot boxes. And the ESRB's response or partial response to these loot boxes. So let me pull this.
The classic bureaucratic, we don't totally understand this, but no, we need to do something response.
So if this is your first time ever hearing about video games, there was a big controversy regarding Star Wars Battlefront 2's loot boxes and microtransactions. And ever since then, loot boxes have been under assault by multiple fronts. And now the ESRB is trying to tackle it. This is from Jason Schreier over at Kotaku. That is a picture that I just enlarged. All right, here we go. As pressure from pundits and politicians mounts, the Entertainment Software Rating Board said today that it will start adding the, quote, in-game purchases, end quote, label to any game that lets you pay real money for digital goods. The label will apply to bonus levels, skins, surprise items such as item packs, loot boxes, mystery awards, music, virtual coins, and other forms of in-game currency, subscriptions, season passes, and upgrades to disable ads, end quote. The ESRB said this morning in a press release. So, Larry, this is basically you're going to walk into GameStop and you'll be looking at boxes and you'll see in-game purchases on 100% of them. Basically. Larry, we've talked a lot about loot boxes here, but what are your thoughts on this?
Like you're saying, they're all going to have it. It's a useless label because there are varying degrees of in-game purchases and they are not all created equal. So, yeah.
I wanted to move down here to something that would probably offend you as a parent. So, the article continues. The label is not designed to warn adult gamers that a game might contain microtransactions. It's designed for concerned parents buying games for their kids. Quote, parents need simple information. This is according to ESRB President Patricia Vance. We can't overwhelm them with a lot of detail. We have not found that parents are differentiating between these different mechanics, end quote. So do you think that is a symptom or a problem?
I guess I don't understand what you're asking.
So what I'm saying is, do you think that they can't differentiate because we don't make an attempt to differentiate, to explain the differentiation?
Gotcha.
Or do you think it's just a matter of parents' willful ignorance about it?
I think it's a little bit of both. We kind of talked about this last week or the week before. you've got parents who are just overwhelmed by all the things their kids are into and trying to keep up with it all. And they're having a hard time. They're struggling to do that. But then you also have parents who've they just kind of give up and they're like, oh, I can't do it anyway. So whatever little Johnny wants. Oh, you can murder hookers in GTA. All right, I know you're 6, but sooner or later you got to learn about this kind of stuff. So I don't think it's one way or the other. But I'm never a fan of treating people like they're ignorant or incapable of understanding information. I say put the information there. And then the ball's in the parents' court of whether or not they're a responsible parent. But if we don't give them the information, we're contributing to the problem, not helping.
Yeah. It's kind of like the ESRB rating system in and of itself. Like, yes, E, T, M, E10 plus, all that stuff. Like, very vague. But it's up to the parents to then flip over the box and be able to read what it is that it's rated that way for, because it's like a movie. If it's rated M, it'll tell you, like, strong language, violence, blood and gore, sexual themes, things like that. When I worked at GameStop, we were required, we would have, it was called a marketing audit, but basically what they would come in and do every now and again was check your signage. And it was for a couple reasons. Number one was because, companies were paying big bucks for us to hang up signs, and they needed to send people to make sure that those signs were actually getting hung up. But the second reason is because we had specific parameters that we had to fall within for, like, the ESRB. And so they would come around and make sure that we had the ESRB rating system posted over and over again, throughout the store. Basically, every 5 or 6 feet, you had to have a little sign that showed what the ESRB rating system was. I feel like you don't have to get a lot more specific without getting a lot more clear, Yeah. There's a difference between concise and vague. Concise is helpful, vague is not, and this is vague. You can put in-game purchases, MT, microtransactions, in-game purchases, SP, season pass, and then have a little signage that goes on your ETM place that says, hey, MT means microtransactions, could be this. And then you rely on the associates of those stores to come in and explain it if people have questions, whether that's at Walmart or at GameStop or wherever. I agree. There needs to be a little more faith in people, but I think the reason that parents don't differentiate is because they don't know that there's something to differentiate with.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't so long ago that you would just buy a game and that was your game. You didn't have to buy anything else with it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like your natural response is to look at this and say, well, the ESRB is trying something, and this is the first step. But then when you dig down into it, they're not really doing anything.
Yeah.
They're adding a sticker to almost every single game that's going to come out. Like, can you name for me a game that's come out that has not had a season pass or microtransactions or anything like that? Because I'm not sure if it exists.
Quantum Break, maybe.
I don't think it had a season pass. So maybe there will be a handful. Maybe there will be a handful of them, but I just don't think it's going to be a deterrent.
Oh yeah, I mean, I said Quantum Break because it's funny, because it's literally the only game I can think of, but the overwhelming majority will have this sticker on them.
All right, going to continue on here. Patricia Vance. It says, Vance said the ESRB does not plan to focus specifically on loot boxes, the controversial mechanic that allows players to spend real or in-game money in exchange for randomized rewards. Quote, I'm sure you're all asking why we aren't doing something more specific to loot boxes. We've done research over the past several weeks and months, particularly among parents. What we've learned is that the large majority of parents don't know what a loot box is. So it's very important for us to not harp on loot boxes per se, to make sure that we're capturing loot boxes, but also other in-game transactions, end quote. So just more of the same. Just the idea that just because a parent doesn't know what something is doesn't mean they don't need to know what it is. And as the ESRB, as the communicator of content and how it affects different age groups of people, which is essentially what you are, you're the gatekeeper of content. It is your job to inform.
And I feel like there's a label you could put on to capture what a loot box is without using the word loot box.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not gambling per se, but some way of putting on there that funds are exchanged for a chance at a reward.
And you can explain that on the back of the box. It doesn't need to be something on the front. Just like all you need on the front is the M. It's on the back where you look up what the M is about. But I don't know. This drives me insane because we are at a crossroad. And when I saw the ESRB was taking action, I was like, well, here is the day of reckoning for this is starting to come. But you also have to understand there's probably a lot of politics involved in this junk. And now I'm not talking like government politics. I'm talking publishers are probably lobbying the ESRB to say, like, look, we don't want there to be a huge... And to an extent, I agree. Because we've talked on the podcast, not all loot box systems are predatory. Yeah. Not all loot box systems are terrible. A lot of loot box systems allow you to get better... a lot of loot box systems allow you to get more in-game content. Take Overwatch, for example. It's all cosmetic, it's all unnecessary, and it has allowed us to get new characters, new maps, ongoing support of a game that is years and years old. 3 years old now? We're in the third year?
Wow.
I think we're in the third year now.
Yeah, there have been 2 summer games, right?
Yeah.
That's the first event.
Yep. So we are in our third year, I'm pretty sure. Or we're inching towards our third year, because didn't it come out in May?
It's like March, April, or May.
Yeah, so we're almost into our third year. But loot boxes allow for that.
Micropones, good to see you back. It's been a long time, buddy.
He says, gambling is a great evil in this world. At best, it's a mild vice. At worst, the means by which you ruin yourself. The kids are being indoctrinated into this is so troubling. I think the whole video game gambling industry needs greater regulation. I don't want my younger family being exposed to this stuff. And we've talked about that, too.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Developing that habit in a child is not good.
But there's really no way to police it, given the digital side of it. It's up to the parents to be able to police it, but I think that what it requires is more parental control about, and I'm talking like built within the system, of like, hey, my kids are only allowed to spend X amount, and that amount can be 0 on loot boxes and microtransactions. Why you would have your credit card information saved on, like, you would never do that for your daughter. You'd never save your credit card information on, on your console, or let her have your password on your phone or whatever.
Well, it gets a little tricky because I think Xbox Live automatically saves your credit card information if you use it. Once, and you got to manually go in and erase it.
I think you can set it to where like you have to enter your password every time you make a purchase or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there does need to be more regulation on it and more transparency about drop rates and that sort of stuff, which is happening in other countries, and I think it needs to happen here as well.
Yeah.
Because it's ruining adults too.
Yeah.
We know plenty of people who spend tons and tons of money on these things, not necessarily to the point of making them financially insecure, but the right person in the right situation spending $200 a month on loot boxes or whatever, it could definitely ruin somebody. Anyway, I don't want to exhaust this too much. We've talked plenty about loot boxes, but just wanted to bring that up. Larry.
Yes.
What is your topic?
All right. My topic is the Overwatch League.
So entertaining. So good.
I finally gave it a chance to start watching it because you were so into it. And I'm glad I did. It's been a fun experience for me. I come and watch sports at your house sometimes. Usually the big football game, the Super Bowl.
Heard of it, Super Bowl.
And every now and then I'll catch a football game on TV or a basketball game. But with those games, like, I understand the basic of the game, but I don't understand anything about deeper strategies at play. I just get to watch how these two collide. But Overwatch has been fun to watch because, like, that's a game I got way into. I do understand the strategies. I get what's happening, what people are trying to accomplish. So it's a lot more fun to watch.
Yeah. I have gotten super into it, dude. And so it airs Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think I watched 3 hours of it Wednesday, 3 or 4 hours of it Thursday, all 6 hours on Friday, and 5 or 6 hours of it on Saturday as well.
See, I won't get that into it, but right now I'm like shopping around trying to figure out who my favorite team is, and once I have that set, then I'll watch just that team's games, basically.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what's good about Owl Overwatch League.
All right, yeah.
What's bad? But also, after that, I wanted to kind of transition to how is this going to affect sports coverage as a whole.
Okay.
So
Cool. Where are we starting?
good.
All right, let's start with the good. Micro wants to know who your favorite teams are. I am really into the Dallas Fuel now, with a caveat. I know a lot of the negative stuff around XQC, who plays Winston for them. He's one of their tanks. But everyone else on that team, I really enjoy watching, especially AKM, because he plays Soldier. He plays a really good Farah as well. I also like watching Houston play, but I'm one of those guys. I'm going to pick a team. I'm just going to stick with him. And for me, that's the Dallas Fuel. Who have you got it down between? Because you have a list.
Yeah, I started with a big list. I've kind of narrowed it down. I don't want to like London Spitfire because, I don't know, they dominate everybody right now. Yeah. For me, they're not fun to watch. Like, I'm cheering for the day someone topples them.
Yeah.
But, so I've narrowed it down to either Dallas Fuel, Houston Outlaws, Los Angeles Gladiators, or Los Angeles Valiant. And I think I'm going to wind up liking either Gladiators or Valiant.
Yeah.
They're playing each other this week.
Yes.
So I'm excited to watch that game.
So,
that'll probably be how I pick.
Yeah.
That's how I picked my favorite basketball team. I just sat down and watched the two New York teams play each other. And
then he was like, Darren Williams, best point guard in the league, baby.
Jerry, I can't remember their names.
Jerry Stackhouse?
Yeah. Like 80 years old, but he can still hit 3-pointers.
So what's good about it? We talked a little bit about this last week, and so I'm probably going to reiterate some of the stuff I said then. But from a production standpoint and from a formatting standpoint, it is in a way that someone who has never been into an esport like me, but who has been very, very into traditional sports, can understand. So starting from a format perspective, all the teams have a city location, even though they all play in LA. But it's always city mascot. So it sounds like a basketball or a football team or whatever. They're formatted into divisions. They play 5 stages. They have rankings. They'll have a playoff at the end. And so I understand that. Whereas with regular esports, like other esports, the teams have convoluted names, the tournaments and all that. It works a little more like international soccer in a way. Like, there's all these different cups, and the same teams can play in those cups, but then there's like nationals and the national team, and like it's very convoluted. To me, the Overwatch League is very clear, and I think if you're gonna want to appeal to the general populace and to people who are into Overwatch in maybe a more casual way, make it like a sport, something you can jump in, pick a team, keep up with them, and be able to understand their context without having to watch all 24 hours of coverage throughout the 4 days that they play. So, and then from so I said formatting, and then what was the other thing I said? I forgot.
Sorry.
But, so, yeah, just being able to understand it as a traditional sports fan, I think goes a long, long way. How about you? What do you find good about it? And I'll try to think of what my other point was.
First, Microphones says that we're both looking really well, by the way. So thank you.
Been paying for a nice haircut.
I've been doing the opposite.
Yeah, you've just been letting it go.
Yeah. So for me, it's easy to follow what's happening. I think is the best thing that's happened. So anytime I've like tried to watch. I've had lots of issues with trying to get into other esports, and so one thing I like about this one is that it's they play by the same rules that we play Overwatch by. There's no difference. Whereas other esports, there's like different rules, like Halo in particular. I talked about that last week. But even the ones that I would kind of get into, it was kind of hard to keep up with which team was which. And I think they do a really great job of making it really clear where you can see people through the walls. You know where people are at on the map. They're differentiated very strongly color-wise. And highlighted in that color, and the weapons they're firing are highlighted in that color. Like, everything is color-coded so that I know who's shooting what where. It's easier to follow than when you're actually playing the game. And that makes it very easy to watch. The variety of angles they can take, how they can just fly the camera around the whole map, they can look at it from anybody's perspective. It just makes it really easy to follow.
So Micro says, the simpler the better, and esports should not be like reading War and Peace. League of Legends has this problem despite its popularity. And I think the little bit I've tried to watch esports, it's more like when I go to watch it, it's because I'll do a lot of Madden. I'll watch FIFA every now and again. I've watched some Halo. I've done some of the PUBG stuff. But to me, it comes across more like I'm watching a more heavily produced individual stream of something. Mostly because I don't understand the context of it as a whole. But whereas and it also feels like in those, it is the video game trying to pretend to be like a sports production. Mm-hmm. Whereas you can feel with Overwatch that it was built from the ground up for this, and they always had this in mind. So every Wednesday at noon, they do a 30-minute or hour-long like preview show of the week, and it looks exactly like an ESPN show. They've got a panel of people. They'll do like feature videos about different players or teams or whatever. Like last week, they did a tour of the Philadelphia's house that they live in, and that was really cool because it's like you're getting a sense of understanding how this league works from Sunday to Monday. Monday to Sunday, that whole entire week. And it feels like an actual sport, an actual production, which is something I think other leagues have tried to emulate and failed, whereas Overwatch seems to be succeeding with it. Now, that being said, I don't know how much of this is because it's the actual case or how much of it is because I truly understand Overwatch more than I understand those things. But given I've played Madden since Madden 95, and I still don't understand the format of the pro sport, the esport of it, leads me to believe that Overwatch really is just doing a much better job of formatting and producing this the way that is going to stick, that's going to give it legs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I totally agree that it's easy to follow. It feels like each individual thing matters. Having the 5 stages is a great idea because it's like you can bomb in a stage and you know everybody's going to show up for the next stage because there's another $100,000 up for grabs at the end of that one.
Yeah.
So even in that kind of convoluted structure, it's really clear and adds a lot of meaning, even in, the 3rd stage when there's teams that are probably going to be at the bottom of the standings that would otherwise have the ability to, that would otherwise maybe just throw it in order to just get to the next season or whatever.
Yeah. Being able to keep track of who's playing what character along the top and the charge of their ults, like that's a really good, useful bar they've got going. Mm-hmm. And it actually serves to build some anticipation. When you see a team with multiple people approaching their ult, you're like, yeah, we're about to see something crazy. Mm-hmm.
I also think they've done a really good job of just getting good talent. And the teams feel, for the most part, pretty balanced. Now, Saturday was a terrible day for us to all watch because all 3 matches were 4-0, 4-0, 4-0. But every other night where I've watched, there's been at least one matchup that's like pretty high drama throughout. So, you have anything else good?
I don't think so. The announcers.
Yeah.
They understand the game and the deeper strategy, and the things they're saying actually, they actually help you understand. They're not just talking to have somebody talk over talk. Mm-hmm. They're not just telling you what's happening, but the deeper meaning of what's happening. It's
funny because I think there is this assumption with the analysts that like if you're watching this, it's because you have a decent understanding of how this game works. Whereas like with football or with basketball or whatever, there tends to be it's just casual people going through, and the commentators are really just kind of background noise. They chime in every now and again to help clarify maybe a rule or some sort of play that happened, but they're not digging deep down into the strategy. But I think the analysts for the Overwatch League really are trying to do a better job of like, this is what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it and why it's not working or why it is working. I really, really appreciate that. And I do think we're getting to a time where there's so much information available about really everything, even traditional sports, because I'm a huge basketball fan too. And I think now fans are far more informed about the things that they're passionate about than they ever have been before. Like basketball fans are crazy about different strategies and coaches and, all the different analytics and stuff like that. And I think Overwatch is setting themselves up to kind of grow that fan base as well, like that they really understand the deeper play of the game. So moving on to what I think needs improved with it. these are it isn't there isn't anything glaring to me that just sticks out that's like that's really really bad.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are steps that they can take that will really go a long way in improving the product as a broadcast, but also as something of national relevance. So one of the things we mentioned earlier was that they have teams are tied to localities, but they all play in LA. And what I mentioned this on Saturday while we were watching, but what I would love to see is have regional play. I don't think they're probably anywhere close to being able to have individual venues for each team, and I'm also not really positive how that would look, but rather having regional places where it's like, okay, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, you're in a division, you're going to have a central hub that's here in the Northeast. Florida, Dallas, and Houston, I guess, are all the closest there. Like, you're going to play in this central location, and that way fans of these teams don't have to pay the ticket to go to LA to watch it. They have a relatively close place to be able to go see it. But I also think for that, you would need the matches to probably be longer rather than playing 4 maps, maybe playing best out of 7 or something like that. Kind of change up the format to make it more of a, I'm going to see my team play for a few hours and not, I mean, there were matches on Saturday that lasted an hour because teams were just getting steamrolled.
Yeah. I don't actually have very much in the way of bad. I left that on there for your sake because you had several good suggestions, I thought.
I don't remember what my other suggestions were.
So there was the local stuff, but you also mentioned it has something to do with putting a delay.
Oh yeah. So one of the problems I have watching it is a lot of the times if an individual player is playing really well, they'll spend entirely too much time focusing on him. So, for instance, I think it was Fuel versus Valiant, they were playing on Hanamura at point B, and soon the Valiant's tracer was going off. But there was a point where he was hiding in a stairwell waiting to ambush, but they stayed on him, and the announcers just called over the mic like a triple kill from somebody else. And so I wish that the broadcast was, the production of it was on maybe like a 15, 20 second delay, just so that the team can say, oh, well, something happened here 20 seconds ago. Let's switch so we can see the triple kill rather than the announcers just having to call it. And the more I go on like the competitive Overwatch subreddit and read, that was a real big problem in the first stage, was that they would one trick on one character, basically. Like, for the whole production, we're just going to keep up with this one guy who's playing Tracer or whatever.
Yeah.
So just allowing the people to see the exciting plays in something that isn't just a replay 30 seconds after you call it.
Yeah. And I very much agree with that. There were some very boring shots, and it takes you out of the action if you're just watching someone stand there. And they tend to focus. So if you're just going live as it is, you're going to focus on just the attackers because that's where like the craziest plays are going to happen. But you're going to miss a lot of cool stuff that the other characters are doing as well. And I like watching these insane tracers like just cut through teams. But I would also like to see what some of the tanks are doing, what some of the healers are doing, so I can learn from those guys as well. Because DPS isn't the only thing that matters, in spite of what 80% of random players on Overwatch think.
Right, and I think it does kind of, as the Overwatch League grows in popularity, you have to think it's going to affect the way that people play the game. And I mean, if you think about baseball, for instance, and baseball's probably not the best example, but there's a few positions in baseball that are more glamorous than the other positions. The pitcher, because the pitcher, he's by himself, like he is the guy. Shortstop is a big one, and catcher. And so you have these kids that watch baseball and they want to be those three things, and I think the more people get into Overwatch League and the more it grows, the more people watch it and be like, well, I want to be like Soon playing Tracer. And we already have a problem in Overwatch where everybody wants to play DPS. And I just think you can curb that by highlighting guys who do really good tank play, really good support play, really good defense play, stuff like that. Let's go to some comments here. Micro says, I think what is important in sports or entertainment is the building of tension or a feeling of anticipation. This helps explain why a low-scoring game like soccer is so popular worldwide. I think COD has a problem with this. There are so many kills that result in little tension. And so Overwatch's while there's a lot of mayhem and chaos, there's really only two objectives you're trying to accomplish: capture point A, capture point B, or push the payload to these 2 or 3 points throughout the map or whatever. And so each of those things, like the game itself is designed to build all of this tension, and it just naturally conveys itself when you get two teams of equal footing playing against one another. He says, do you think they should have less players on the team? So I think the rosters...
And he clarifies that. Maps are made so there are lots of obstacles in the way. A football pitch does not do this, so a big team works.
So you're talking about playing on the... I thought you were talking about roster size.
Yeah, that's what I initially read it as well. The roster size makes sense because being able to sub people in who have different strengths, that's good.
And 12 allows you to do 6-on-6 scrim when to practice. So, but as far as... I don't think reducing the number of people on a map would help at all. No. Because you want the product to look like the product you play at home. Just like you want it. It's the same thing like in football today. The high school game looks more like the pro game than it ever has before. You have more high schools running professional style offenses than ever before because you want it to look the same throughout. And I think that's the same thing here because not only are you looking to farm the talent from those places, but you're also hoping that people catch a passion for the game and stick with it in those places as well. So make it look as similar as possible.
And it would make it easier to follow, but I think it would also come at a cost of the action that you would actually see.
Yeah. Because
you reduce it even, like, if you drop 2 people out just to 4 people, you've got enough to run 1 person in each category.
Yeah. And then you said you had one more question?
Do you think any of the things that they're doing well will bleed over and affect the way that other sports are covered?
I don't know because I don't know what they're doing that's really different from any kind of traditional sport. Really, the place I think they can make inroads that would affect like an ESPN or Fox Sports or whatever is in interactivity between the audience and the gameplay, but I really don't think that they're doing anything super revolutionary with it. They have like the tokens that they drop for all the games that you watch or whatever, but outside of that, there's nothing really interactive about it, taking advantage of that, of like Twitch as a platform, I don't think.
Okay.
And, like sports broadcasting has tried to pull in like, oh, we're going to pull from the hashtag and show like, what people are saying about it. And you don't even get that really with the Overwatch League. It's never like, well, let's go to the chat about what's going on here because the chat's just a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's really going to affect much, but I do like seeing something that is so closely emulating what we do have with traditional sports because it's familiar. But I was reading I think I was on the subreddit, and they were talking like, well, and there was a comment thread about like their biggest goal is to get like a TV deal or whatever, and I'm like, is it though? Like Twitch gave them bukus of money for exclusive streaming rights for the league for the first 2 years.
Yeah,
and I don't think you capture an audience of our age and younger by going to Spike TV or ESPN or whatever, like because those places are losing subscribers in droves.
Yeah. The only thing, so there are 2 things where I feel like maybe it could have some impact. One is along the lines of interactivity, and maybe they already have this and I'm just ignorant to it. But on the app you can like kind of follow along the stats of the players, like maybe working that more into some of these other sports instead of having to wait for the announcers to tell you. Like you more or less right now you have to wait, all right, for them to tell you how the player you care about is doing. And maybe there are places where you can go find that. I don't know. But
well, like for basketball, if I'm watching a game, I have the NBA app up, and I'm keeping up with the stats on there because they live track the stats.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, never mind. My ignorance of sports is affecting this question.
Yeah, well, but I do think that's a place where the Overwatch League is going to grow into something. We were talking about this on the phone, like. They have a stats place on their website, which if you're into the Overwatch League and you don't have the app yet, download it. It's awesome. They send you alerts when teams go live. You get live score updates, all that stuff. But they have a grayed out option on their site right now for stats, and I do think everybody goes to Master Overwatch to look at their numbers, and being able to compare what you do to what Mickey's doing as Diva or whatever, like that's a cool element of it because it is a lot more comparable than, I rushed for 1,200 yards in high school or whatever.
Yeah.
Trying to compare that to professional stats, it's apples to oranges, but it feels a little more apples to apples when you're talking about Overwatch, even if it isn't.
It would be cool if they had a feature like type in your gamer tag. Here's how you stack against this person's stats on this character. But also the other area where I would like to maybe see some improvement is I actually thought that the announcers explaining the strategy and stuff was par for the course, and you were the one that told me, no, not really. But it might be cool to see some of the other sports like get a little more intentional in their coverage of the games.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, so the NBA, one of the things they do on NBA TV is they have players only night, and rather than having like regular sports commentators do the games, they have players call the games. And in theory, it's a cool idea because these are people who understand the game better than anybody else, but it just turns into them like, hamming it up or whatever, or trying to be like broadcasters rather than using their own expertise to bring it to the game. Micro says, what game do you think will be the biggest esport? Honestly, I think Overwatch. Overwatch has built this huge following. It's easy to understand and to follow in and of itself. I think what's trying to happen with the Battle Royale games like Fortnite and with PUBG and all that sort of stuff is a little, it's kind of transient. Like, I think it's here for now, but it's so, like that, those games are so luck driven.
Yeah.
Like you can drop into a city that normally gives you all kinds of great stuff, and one time when there's $100,000 on the line, boom, there's nothing. Like what you need in a sport that can grow is consistency and strategy. And while strategy exists in PUBG, there's no consistency.
And with PUBG in particular, I love PUBG, but I'm gonna beat up on it some more again. Like the fact that this game is still in a pre-release state, and we're already trying to turn it into a tournament game. Like that's just kind of absurd. Mm-hmm. But I think Overwatch. I agree with you. Overwatch is going to be the game that breaks through, and Overwatch that is the story of Overwatch. They're the game that brought this style of game to the console in a meaningful way. They're the game that just. I don't know of another game that's had this level of staying power with people. That just, it did not fade away. And I think that because of the deliberate design of the game toward to this end, they are going to succeed in this arena. Until
the next game that's designed like this comes along. Because this is going to be the strategy now for games that can take the time to really build a player base. I think, but I do think like this games as a service idea is going to pull away from companies that are like, because the esports requires a lot of investment and a lot of patience. I mean, it's taken 2 years for the Overwatch League to even launch, and they've had like the Overwatch World Cup. They've had other professional sports leagues, but you have to dedicate time in and not start thinking about sequels. And I think too many companies are thinking. I mean, even Destiny. They initially wanted to make a Destiny that they added content to for 10 years, and 3 years later they launched a sequel. So
yeah,
it takes some staying power.
But
go ahead.
I think that with Overwatch though, if they can really establish themselves in this space early on, you're going to have the monopoly effect. Like Facebook, you cannot launch a new social network with the same level of success as Facebook. Mm-hmm. Well, and they're slipping. They might get to the point where you can, but I think that Overwatch has the potential. They're positioned to where they could dominate that market, even if other games try to come into that space.
Micro says, that's a really nice shirt. I wish we had shirts like that in England. Croft, where do you get your shirts from? I think this shirt is from Old Navy. So, all right.
I did not realize Micro was from England.
Yeah,
I should have been tipped off when he said favorite team with a U.
Oh, did he?
He did.
I didn't notice. Oh, yeah, he did say it. There's no U in that word. All right, let's move on, Larry. To the news
with the podcast guys.
First item on the list, President Trump says he is meeting with members of the video game industry, but the video game industry does not know. Let's start with the original story from Eddie over at GameSpot. It says, President Trump will meet with members of the video game industry to discuss what can be done about video games in the wake of the Parkland, Florida shooting in February. After the shooting, Trump hosted a meeting at the White House to discuss school safety, and among the subjects that came up were the level of violence in video games and movies. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Trump will be, quote, meeting with members of the video game industry to see what they can do on that front as well, end quote. That was following some stuff about how games are messing with the minds of our youth. Well,
We talked about that last week. Feel free to go back and look.
the update for this story says the ESA says it has still not been invited to any meeting with Trump. Quote, the ESA and our member companies have not received an invitation to meet with President Trump, end quote, the organization told GameSpeed on Thursday evening, U.S. time. So, who's Trump meeting with, Larry?
This is par for the course. And Trump should be familiar with par and courses since he spends more time golfing than presidenting.
Presidenting, the verb form.
He just says whatever is in his head in the moment. It's really terrifying.
Well, this is particularly terrifying because this wasn't just him tweeting that he was going to meet with him. This wasn't him getting caught on a hot mic saying he was going to meet with him. He told his press secretary to go out and say that he was going to be having a meeting with the video game industry. And what I think, so apparently Trump has family members who are a part of a big gaming company.
I forget which company. I can Google that one.
Yeah, look that up. So maybe he's meeting with this guy, and it's just gonna be like a an in-office conversation. It's not like a big conference room meeting or whatever. But it makes you concerned when the people who really are the voice of video games in those situations with the ESA aren't the ones who are going to be sitting down with policymakers about this stuff. But rest easy, guys, because it has already been determined by the Supreme Court that video games are a protected form of free speech. And so the fight, and that's the problem with Trump as a president as a whole, not to get on too much of a soapbox here, but he doesn't understand the context of the nation that he's leading, the things that have already been decided. These issues are not new issues. The violence in video game conversation has gone back all the way to Doom.
His brother sits on the board of ZeniMax Media, which owns several subsidiaries that are located all over the world through its division known as Bethesda Softworks.
Yes. Okay. So he knows some people personally within it, and hopefully those people will be able to actually cite the research that so many people are making up research to counter. Because research has been done, and there is no link. And as Micro can tell you, he is from a country who has the same exact video games and doesn't have this level of gun violence. And I don't like that argument in general, because the whole idea of I grew up playing violent video games and I'm not like that, is the same argument gun owners make when they're like, I own 100 guns and none of them has shot anybody. It's the same. You can't just generalize like that. But when there have been actual studies that have been done to show there's no correlation in this. Mm-hmm. You can't continue to deny it and make up that there is some sort of link. And we talked about this a lot last week, so I don't want to drum up all the same conversation. But you have anything else to add about Trump?
Not really. This story it's one of the many stories where you just laugh because you've got to disconnect from the fact that this dude has a say in what happens in reality. So you laugh at his silliness.
So Micro says, isn't the reality that video games have nothing to do with violence? This point needs to be demonstrated not just legally but also societally. I don't want 80-year-old women thinking people shoot people because they play Viva Pinata. But I think that point has been proven.
Yeah.
Scientifically. I mean, societally, there's so many things that pour into who we are as a society that you can't pinpoint the one thing that causes you to change. I mean, there are far greater things psychologically and societally about ourselves that lead us to murder people or whatever. And violence is down here violent video games are down here on the list. And, lack of all those things you were listing last week about lack of empathy, that sort of stuff, that's at the top.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times and ways you can prove the point before people will start to listen. All right, next item on the list, Larry. The next Battlefield is rumored to be set in World War II, and it will include loot boxes. This is from GameSpot, our boy Eddie. It says, earlier this year, Electronic Arts announced that a new Battlefield game is coming this fall, but at the time, the company shared no details about it. Now, GamesBeat is reporting that the title is called Battlefield 5, and it will be set during World War II, just like Call of Duty World War II. I thought that sentence was funny. The report credits this information to sources, quote, familiar with EA's plans, end quote. The game is coming from Battlefield series developer DICE, which is based in Sweden. And then we'll talk about the loot boxes here in a second. But in other news, water is wet. The World War II thing's interesting. What do you make of that?
I don't know. That's cool, I guess. Call of Duty made this step because there were so many people wanting them to go back to that time frame. And so either Battlefield 2 is like, well, we got to stay competitive with Call of Duty, or they're like, well, people want this, so let's give it to them. Either way, it is what it is.
I was so excited about a World War I game, and I really enjoyed my time with Battlefield 1, even though I didn't spend a ton of time in it. But we talked about this when Battlefield 1 was announced, that World War I is such a time that isn't touched in film, in television, or in video games. And so it was interesting to have a big studio like DICE jump in and say, we want to tell these stories about probably one of the most unique wars dynamically. And it saddens me a little bit that they said, well, we told all the stories we want to tell in one game with one 8-hour campaign. Now, because what I don't want to see is another take on Storming the Beach in Normandy. We have that in handfuls of video games. And is DICE going to do it amazingly? Yeah, but other games have too. The Call of Duty mission where you do it is good. Like, I want to see things I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Kind of like with Assassin's Creed. Like, they didn't want to go too far into modern history because it was just going to tell stories that have already been told. So they went back to Egypt, which is ancient Egypt, which is some place that isn't touched, and found great success there. Battlefield 1 found great success there. Like, why don't you stay there a little while and mine more stories out of it?
Yeah.
So a little more information about the loot boxes. This is from Jason Schreier at Kotaku. It says, the people who make Battlefield, just like many other developers across the video game industry, have heard the loot box furor loudly and clearly. The next Battlefield's microtransaction plans remain in flux as they are in many games until close to release. But it's unlikely they will inspire as much anger as Star Wars Battlefront 2's did. That will be a theme. Based on conversations I've had with developers at a range of major studios lately, nobody wants their game to be remembered for its loot boxes. Quote, no one's going to do any pay-to-win stuff anymore, end quote. One person close to the next Battlefield told me recently. Quote, we didn't take any of the loot box controversy lightly, end quote. Not surprising.
No, it would be suicide for your game to announce pay-to-win loot boxes for sure.
So, and the thing about it is, like, it's almost a non-story because Battlefield 1, and he mentions this later on in the story, all of their microtransactions were cosmetic only as well. And so Battlefront is really the only one who screwed the pooch for EA on this. But it is going to be the microtransactions are going to be put under a microscope. Yeah.
People are going to be watching now. And you're going to have a big sticker on your game letting everyone know that they're microtransactions.
Micro says there's so much material to be had with World War II. And it's true. I completely agree. But the problem is we stick to the same thing.
Yeah.
First mission, guys, we're storming the beach in Normandy, and then it's about to push into France as we try to retake from the Germans. Like, that's the story almost every World War II game tells. And I want to see something different. And I'm guaranteed to get that with a World War I game. And I have to wait and make sure that it's something different with a World War II game. Let's see. He says, I would love to see a poignant and sensitive liberation of the concentration camps in the video game form. The message of the evil of fascism is always worth relating, or relaying is probably what he meant, and it auto-corrected.
Relating can carry that meaning.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyway.
This is British speak.
Sorry. I don't speak British.
You're rubbish at it.
No, I think that's a cool idea. I would like to see some stuff more focused on the Pacific side and leading up to the dropping of the A-bombs. I think would be interesting. Let's not go to the cinematic moments, the Pearl Harbor moments, the D-Day moments, those sorts of things.
And I think with the A-bomb, with the concentration camps, maybe there's been a hesitance to cover those because for a long time video games weren't considered this serious medium. But Battlefield 1, I think, showed us that you can cover these things in a way that has seriousness, has respect to what actually happened, that tells the story.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Next item on the list. Nintendo has already pulled user reviews for Switch games. I thought this story was really interesting, Larry. This is from Mallory Locklear over at Engadget. Also, if you're watching on the stream or on the video and wondering why we aren't having the news pulled up, we are using a new form of OBS that links with Streamlabs, and I cannot get the display capture to work. So I'm going to keep working at it and maybe get with support and try to figure that out. The story reads, last week, Nintendo began allowing customers to leave reviews for Switch games on its site. Along with leaving comments, reviewers could list themselves as a Nintendo fan, core gamer, casual player, or a parent, and they could also tag their review with a number of descriptions such as kid-appropriate, immersive, or great characters. But as Polygon reports, customer reviews have already been suspended, and there's no word on when or if they might come back. On Nintendo's website, there is now a note under customer review status that says, quote, customer reviews have been taken offline as we evaluate this feature and its functionality. We currently have no estimated date on when an update will be provided. We appreciate the positive response and thank the reviewers who have provided such thoughtful commentary on the games, end quote. He did mean relayed. That's what he's getting to here in the chat. So, Larry.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this? I'm going to throw this away because I keep messing with it.
Anytime. So I'm not sure exactly how Nintendo's user reviews were laid out, but anytime a person can just log on with an account of any sort and leave a review, it's just a recipe for complete uselessness at best and utter disaster at worst. Mm-hmm. I think The Last Jedi. This is going to be a controversial statement on people who hated the movie, but objectively, The Last Jedi is a great example of this. When you look at the user Rotten Tomato score versus the critics score, people want to say, oh, the critics were just glossing over all these horrible errors and the average person hated it. But when you look at any other way of measuring how good that movie was, that prevented people from having a way to make multiple accounts. So the cinema score, where they interview them as they come out of the theater. Like, the reviews were more in line with the critics' reviews, demonstrating that you had a bunch of people making troll accounts and nerfing the score.
Well, and there were reports that Facebook groups were created and shut down that were gathering people together to go bombard Rotten Tomatoes with bad reviews for not just that movie, but DC movies, other movies that have toxic fan bases.
So I wonder,
counter fan bases.
Yeah. So I wonder if that had something to do with them shutting it down, or if it was just meant to be a trial run. I don't know, but I'm not big on user reviews really. Like on Amazon, if I can find verified purchasers, those carry more weight with me, and I'm typically going to look at 4-star and 3-star reviews to get an accurate assessment of the product rather than the 1 stars or the 5 stars.
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever interact on Xbox with like the user reviews or whatever when you're in the digital store. But I think probably PlayStation is a better example of this. But if you hop onto the PlayStation store, it seems like every game has between 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah.
And Xbox, there's a little more parity with the Xbox stuff. You kind of see stuff running the gamut. But I'm with you. I take most of it with a grain of salt because there's no way of indicating how much actual experience people have with those games, which should be something easy for you to relay because all of your like stats for your game are tied to your account. So you sign onto your account, you leave a review for a game, and it should be able to show up next to it saying this person played 35 hours of Monster Hunter before leaving this review, or show me the playtime that they put into it, because I'm going to take their word more seriously than somebody who played an hour of Monster Hunter, or this person hasn't even downloaded the game.
Yeah.
I like the idea of like a verified buyer thing like Amazon has. I'm one of those guys, like, I'm going to go look for professional reviews about anything that I buy. Whether it's a chair or a microphone or a video game, I'm going to go read reviews of people who I've heard of or from outlets that I've heard of. And then it's my fault if I buy a product that isn't bad because I didn't do my research or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't think this was like a trial run. I think this was just Nintendo saying, Nintendo has always been kind of a closed platform in terms of allowing people to just submit uncensored material about their products, and the trolling culture has just grown rampant. And yeah. I think it's good for Nintendo to put their foot down and say we're just not going to do this, or we're gonna figure out a way to do it and do it better. Because until you have a way of verifying people's actual experience, customer reviews are pointless. So, see if there was anything else really in this story. There wasn't while you read those comments.
Micro said, an interesting question is whether people actually view movies based on reviews. It would be interesting to see a correlation between box office performance and tomato meter performance.
I think it would be more interesting to kind of see, and I think this is maybe part of what he's asking here, is like, you have all these pre-screenings and reviews that come out beforehand, and people fall into one of two camps. They either get so hyped because a movie's getting good reviews that they go in with that hype, and the rose-colored glasses color the film, or you see somebody who reads the hype and is like, well, nothing can be that good, and they go and they nitpick every little thing. So I would love to see, like, what does a user rate a movie after reading a review for it before going to watch it or listening to a review? Because you have a lot of spoiler-free reviews out there, or you can like read the first half and it doesn't go into spoilers or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I do think, and I know I do this too. If I'm gonna play something and play it and come get my thoughts on it on the podcast, I try not to read anything about it before doing that, because I don't want my view of it to be colored by somebody else's view. But because I know me, that if I do listen to a review or read a review about something, it's generally going to affect the way that I view it going in. Because I'll be looking for either the really good or the really bad.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with you. Granted, this is all very... I'm blanking on the word. This is just our personal... Anecdotal.
Yeah.
But once I see a trailer and I know I want to see a movie, like, all right, I'm done looking at information about this movie. But where these reviews do matter for me is if I'm on the fence about a movie, I'll be like, all right, well, let's see what people are saying about this. And that'll factor in whether I actually go to the theater and see it or rent it on DVD or Blu-ray. Even
VHS, Laserdisc.
If I see a trailer and I want to see a movie, it doesn't matter how bad the reviews are, I'm going to watch it. I just might not go see it in theaters, which does matter.
Yeah. That's a big price difference.
Yes.
$2.50 Redbox or is it $2.50 or $2? I don't watch movies. I think it's $2.50 for a Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Or $10 to buy a movie ticket, but then you have the family.
Yeah.
So, all right, next item on the list, Larry. This is from Brian Barnett over at IGN. It says PS Plus to stop offering PS3 and Vita games. It says PlayStation Plus will stop offering monthly PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita titles from next year. That's not a good sentence. Starting March 8th, 2019, the PlayStation Plus monthly games lineup will no longer include PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita titles, Sony announced today. He just repeated the same thing. He has a word count, man, and he's going to reach it, all right? No other changes are being made to the service, and members will still keep access to any PS3 and Vita titles they redeem or have redeemed, but no new games will be added beyond that point. Sony stated it will continue to prioritize PS Plus benefits, including online multiplayer, online game save storage, monthly games on PS4, and exclusive PS Store discounts. So, what do you think of this, Larry? He's shrugging for the audio listeners.
Oh, yeah. Shrug.
I
don't know anything about PlayStation, but it seems like PS3 and Vita, those have been around for a while. I understand not offering them anymore.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in.
The PlayStation 3 is 12 years old. 12 years old, man. And I saw a lot of people like commenting on Reddit and on like the IGN article and stuff like, well, this just diminishes the value of PlayStation Plus, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, does it? Like the whole point of paying for PS Plus now is you're getting a more consistent and stable server experience closer to what Xbox Live delivers, despite the fact that PlayStation consistently fails on that. I'm far more upset about the times where where PlayStation's online servers are down than I am about PS3 and PS Vita titles.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vita titles were cool because it was kind of a talking point among that community every month, and it kept the dream alive for Vita owners. But you just have to expect that when a platform is 13 years old, they're gonna move on to other things. And the other thing is they didn't talk about what the PlayStation 4 library is going to look like after that. They didn't say we're only going to offer 2 PlayStation 4 games. They have PSVR stuff that they may do. They may expand the PS4 roster monthly that you can have access to, because there have been games that have been introduced on PlayStation Plus that have been very beneficial for PlayStation going forward. Rocket League being the best example.
Yeah.
Is a game that has only grown in popularity since it launched on PlayStation Plus. So don't get all bent out of shape about this. Like, companies are going to move on. Micro says, I know nothing about this topic, but it is sad considering my own mortality that the PS3 is 12 years old. It's insane. It's also like $350 cheaper than it was when it launched now. So, and then let's see. Last item on the list, there's a new Overwatch hero that is in the PTR right now. How far into this episode are we?
An hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, we're making good time here. Compared to last week.
We
were 2 hours last week. Larry, you probably know far more about this than I do.
Torbjorn's daughter, Brigette.
Brigitte.
Like
there was a pronunciation guide in this. Oh no, it was in another article. But yes, it is Brigitte.
But she's like a mashup between a tank and a healer. She's Torbjorn's daughter. She always wanted to be an armorer. And if you watch her intro video, she talks about how, I can hide in a shop making armor, or I can be out on the battlefield. So she'll be a hero that can give you armor. She's got some good knockback abilities. And being a tank hybrid, she's probably going to have a little bit more health to work with. I haven't watched any of the actual gameplay of her from the PTR yet. I'm going to be honest with you. But the concept of the hero, I really like. I'm not going to play this hero. This is not in my wheelhouse. But they're always coming out with new heroes. No two heroes are ever the same, and I don't understand how anyone has enough creativity to do this.
So I've watched a little bit. I haven't watched any full games, but I've watched like demonstrations of her abilities and whatnot. She's already gotten nerfed on the PTR, so that's good to know.
That's typical.
Yeah, well, because her shield stops basically anything. So like Reinhardt's charge, if you throw your shield up, it stops his charge and stuns him for a moment. It's kind of got. It's got the same function as like McCree's flashbang. It stuns him for a second for you to do some damage. Her weapon is really cool. Like the mace thing that she uses is pretty sweet. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, because she is more of like a paladin character. Like she flexes between two things, and it'll be interesting to see how she performs in the current meta, especially. But if the meta starts to move more towards a Reinhardt thing like it was, a few months ago, it's going to be even more interesting, because she does seem like such a good counter to a lot of his abilities. But we haven't had a chance to play because we are not on PC. We're not on PTR. So, all right, Larry, let's move on. Let's move on to this question. Micro says, where's the subscribe button on this channel? We're working towards it. So in order to get a subscribe button, you need to stream so many hours over 30 days and have so many viewers at a time. And we're working towards that, but I'm glad to see that somebody is interested. Larry, let's move on to everybody's favorite segment. The random question of the week for the month for this week. Larry, it's your question.
My favorite thing about the Overwatch League is that it got you interested in Overwatch again. And you came back with a vengeance. And see, I thought you were going to come back and still just play Pharah all the time, which is fine. You're a great Pharah. But that's not what you did. You've been playing all these other characters, and you're able to flex, and now we've got more people on the team who can flex, and so we are beginning to do work. I've loved it. So my random question, in celebration of this wonderful, wonderful thing that has happened, is what are some other things that you grew tired of, stopped doing for a while, stopped enjoying for a while, but then you came back with renewed appreciation?
Losing weight. Now, I'm not even kidding, man. So when I got out of college, I decided I am fat, and I'm going to lose some weight so that I can find me a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, I was just a homogenous blob. So I lost like 80 pounds and was looking awesome.
You got trim.
But I gained like 60 of those pounds back after I got married. But now I'm back on this diet. I'm doing awesome on it. I'm losing weight. I'm feeling like, back when I lost it all the first time, it was like, this is coming natural to me. And then I started to like throw more things in that got me off course, got me off track. But now that like I'm back in it, I'm finally feeling in this place like, hey, I kind of got this. And so I've lost over 15 pounds already in the last like month and a half. And so
Nice.
that's one thing. Dieting is one of those things. It's like, it was the same thing with Overwatch. You do it so long, you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then it takes something bringing you back in. And for me, it was just like feeling like crap. And I was tired of feeling like crap. So I do basically like this no sugar diet now. And I feel awesome pretty much every day except Saturday night on cheat day when I've just pounded my body with sugar for an entire day.
All right.
But baseball was another one for me. And that was because there was just so much of it. Like, so I grew up a huge baseball fan. I've always been an Indians fan. And I was going to kind of mention this with the Overwatch League stuff. Like, I think one of the reasons, like, having localities that people can go visit is so important is because it's in those moments that you create lifelong fans of something. So I'm an Indians fan because my family's from Cleveland, and one of my earliest memories is going to an Indians game with my godfather. And from that moment on, I was like, I am an Indians fan. But when I was in college, they play 162 games a year. They don't broadcast a ton of it on like cable television anymore. You had to pay for the package and all that. But I came back in and just got really, really heavily into it in the last couple of years again, to the point where I'm really excited about baseball season yet again. So those are the two major ones for me. I'll probably think of more while you tell me what yours are.
Okay. My first one is actually sort of health related as well. My first one is running. As a teenager, I did track and cross country, and I was one of those people. I didn't do it for health or anything. I liked it. It was fun. Then in my college years, it was time consuming, and I wasn't good at balancing homework, and I wanted to play lots of video games and have lots of friends and do lots of fun stuff. And running didn't fit, so I didn't do that anymore, and got progressively more and more out of shape. And I would like kind of jump back on it for a little while, but I really wouldn't make time for it. But last year I challenged myself. I ran every day last year, at least a mile. This year I haven't been able to because I've got a pretty bad planner's wart on my foot, and up until this week I actually couldn't put any pressure on my heel. Which is important. An important part of running is being able to put weight on your foot.
Yes.
But I'm back into it. And as soon as my foot's healed, I have no doubt I'm going to be back out there again. It's a good time to clear my head, get away from other stuff. And you just feel better when you're physically active. Mm-hmm. So even if you hate running, find something you can do, because you will feel a lot less like garbage if you do more than just sit around all the time.
Yeah.
So that's one for me. Another one is comic books. As a kid, I was way into comic books, and I never really followed any series. I may have shown. I have like an old Mighty Morphin Power Rangers backpack full of comics from my childhood. Have I ever shown you this?
No.
Oh, okay. Before you leave, I'm going to show this to you. But I didn't follow anything. I have all these random issues of random comics from all over the place. And then when I got older and had my own money to spend, I was like, I'd really like to get into reading comics again. I really enjoy that format. But everything was so deep in, I didn't know where to get into it. And then when the New 52 happened, I set about getting all of the base Batman. So not like all of the Batgirl, Batwoman, Bat this, Bat that. Just the Batman comics. I set about getting as many of those as I could. Mm-hmm. And I really liked that. And I guess what kicked that off, though, was actually in college getting into The Walking Dead. I had a friend who got me into that, and I read all the way up through the Governor's story arc before. I think that was over before the show came out, because I'd been reading them for a while before the show happened. But I'm not up to date on The Walking Dead anymore, So I don't know. That those are two things that interested me. I lost interest. I regained interest.
Micro says, a thing that I have come back to is Shakespeare. At school, I loved myself a bit of the bard, but then I did all science subjects and became a doctor of medicine after uni. But recently, I've reread the plays, and the language is so beautiful, it gives one a reason to be alive. That's way more fancy than ours.
And also, we just learned he's way smarter than we are.
Yeah.
He's a doctor of medicine.
That's true.
I have a planner's wart that I need to hop on a plane and come fix.
But another thing for me, and this isn't just me shilling the fact that I stream, but is streaming. We used to stream a lot, and I fell out of it, and it was another one of those with like the Overwatch League. I started watching it, and I was like, I want to do this again. I've started watching more people streaming, and it's just something fun for me to do, even if we don't have a ton of people tune in a lot. I like getting on, and for the occasional time that people do jump on and watch with us, it's a lot of fun. Or just to be able to go back and watch like the ridiculous conversations we have during our gameplay or whatever. Yeah, you can check the stream schedule below if you want to see, but I stream just about every day now.
Another one that I pop in and out of this one. I love to write, and so the easiest outlet for that is blogging. And so from time to time, I'll just get in a mood and blog for like 6 months, and then I won't for a couple of years. My most recent outlet for that was when we were doing 2 Left 6, being able to write about video games. That was pretty cool. Micro asked, do you get a runner's high? The science behind the runner's high is fascinating. I do. I have many times. I don't get one every time I run. I think you have to push yourself to a certain degree. And I'm not sure about this, but I guess it's probably like drugs. As your body gets used to the limit, you have to push yourself harder to get the runner's high. I don't know. But the most recent experience of it I had was, so running every day means no rest days. So by November, everything below my waist hurt all the time. But I had gotten 11 months deep, and I wasn't about to stop running. I was going to finish this thing out. But I got extra stupid in December. One night I decided, well, it's almost over. Let's just see how far I can go. And so I ran my typical 5K, got up to 4 miles, felt fine, got up to 5 miles. And at 5 miles, runner's high hit me, and I'm like, I can run all night long. So I just kept going 6 miles. I texted my wife while I'm running, hey, because it was late at night, I'm fine. I haven't been murdered or anything. I'm feeling great.
And then he was murdered moments later, and his wife didn't worry.
I got up to...
He's still running to this day.
I got up to 7 miles, and I'm like, wife, I'm at 7. And I actually do refer to my wife as wife. That wasn't me protecting her name or anything. Wife, I'm at 7 miles. I'm doing great. I'm feeling great. And she's like, well, remember you have this going on, so you should probably come back home. You don't want to exhaust yourself. And I was like, okay. So I get home, and as soon as I stopped running, the runner's high kicked out, and I just dropped. My legs were jello. They were achy. They were horrible. And I went inside, and I sat down and regretted it for the rest of December because I still had to keep running.
And then he realized he had ran to his home in West Virginia. He was at his childhood home.
Yes.
Miles and miles away. All right. Micro says, I think this stream has been great. Well, we think you've been great. Thank you for tuning in and chatting with us. If you want to share us with some friends, they can find us everywhere. And if you want to be a part of the chat, come on over to twitch.tv/player3podcast and do this show along with us.
Every Monday.
Every Monday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time, America.
Eastern Standard Time, except next week it will begin to be Eastern Daylight Time.
That's right. So, hey, for Micro, it's going to work out. We'll be only 4 hours ahead rather than 5 hours for the next 2 weeks. So, take advantage of that, Micro, next week at 9 p.m. for you. All right? All right, Larry, who are you?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LarryHuntsZombies, LARHUNTS Zombies.
And I am Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at TK from Antioch. You can also see all of that down here at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Right over here.
Do I even need to spell it anymore?
Well, for the audio listeners, possibly. But and then you can find me streaming over here on twitch.tv/player3podcast. We do the podcast every Monday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And then we're on Twitter. iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, youtube.com/player3podcast. Leave us a rating, a review, a subscription.
So I'm going to interrupt the flow. I'm sorry. And come drop by the regular streams because it is hilarious to watch us play PUBG.
Because we suck.
We get into crazy situations regularly.
Mostly because we don't play scared. We just go and we're like, let's hunt them down.
If you come in our vicinity, we are going to find you, and one of us is going to die, either you or us. Exactly. Probably us, but when it's you, it's real cool.
All right, so yeah, come do that. We'll probably be streaming some Overwatch tonight around 9:30, probably 9:30. So yeah, thank you for coming by. We are the Player 3 Podcast. Player 3 Podcast. P3P.